What are your overarching thoughts about this series as we get ready for Game 6?
I'm going to try not to dump on the team that's losing now for a change of pace. And I think from the Sixers perspective, my overarching thoughts are a surprise that they've had two phenomenal James Harden games. Like he basically won them two games, one of which did not feature Joel Embiid in the lineup. So it's like a little bit of a stretch to say, well, that's found money because Harden, for all his playoff whatever throughout his career, he's just like he's capable of that. He can get you 40 and just win you a game. That's how he spent like 7 straight seasons with the Rockets when he was really at his peak. So like, yeah, once in a while those games are going to happen. So impressed by Harden. I think again, I keep looking for these things to say, well, we're having a different conversation if and on game 5, right? Where are we? It's 3.
It's
I can
3-2
never remember the
Sixers.
game. The most recent game, Boston shot 3 for 13 on wide open threes. That's 6+ feet of distance between them and the shooter and the defender, and 4 of 15 on open, which is like 4 to 6 feet. So yet again, just like if the Celtics make a couple more threes, because that was a single digit game, then like, what are we talking about? So I do think there's reasons to be critical of the Celtics. Their offense gums up sometimes. They have not had a good answer for Harden. They're letting Embiid shoot the mid-range jumpers that he wants to, but like, make some shots and things are a lot different. If like Horford in particular, like the first half, like Horford was getting good looks and just can't hit anything. And, that's a big deal because then Embiid doesn't have to, then the Sixers can pack the paint and it just makes things harder. And it makes an offense that is prone to kind of gear grinding, like fall into that more quickly and struggle to get out of it. But the Sixers have just been good. Like Tyrese Maxey finally got loose. Getting him the ball on the move is just like, that's hard to handle if you have decent spacing.
So fast.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm mostly crediting the Sixers. And maybe that's just because I didn't think that they had much of a chance in this series. So it's like more surprising to me, but yeah, I don't know. Do you feel differently? Do you think this is a Sixers success or a Celtics failure?
It's a Sixers success for sure. I mean, like even Daniel House, who's apparently just a 10-game player, comes in midway through the playoffs. Right. He's just like dominant. He was huge so for them. And then you mentioned Tyrese Maxey. Tobias Harris had a great game, just rebounding. I thought he provided some tough one-on-one defense. And then he's gotten better at making quick decisions with the ball, but he gave you more of a scoring punch. And in chat, Stefan Stojic, being beaten by Harden without a first step. And like, look, Harden still found ways to just dice up the Celtics in the middle of the floor. And I think that's the biggest criticism. And people were lighting into Joe Mazzulla for this. And I saw Half Court Hoops on Twitter during game 5. It said, the Celtics are just letting the Sixers go to that left side pick and roll, like to their left with Embiid and Harden. Harden wants to go to his left. And if you're going to be in drop against Embiid and give him the middle of the floor, he's been banging in those jumpers. And so what is the adjustment? And I wonder, maybe Horford can't play this way anymore. And look, Robert Williams III certainly can't play this way anymore. He's been just, speaking of diced up, it feels like he's just been relegated to obscurity in this series. Can you just go and play higher now and put because when you're looking at who's behind Al Horford, even if he gets beat, like you're going to be helping. There's sometimes it's PJ Tucker and then like a Daniel House on the same side of the floor. And even if it's Maxey on that side of the floor, like you can live with someone helping off PJ Tucker in the corner because there might be times where he doesn't shoot. And I know he's been on so many good teams for a reason. He's an NBA champion for a reason. But I think the Celtics, they seem very hesitant to throw to it the ball unless it's ever Embiid. And like, are we at the point where it's like, well, maybe try something different there? So that might feel more like a failure. And I'll also say their offensive process for a team that was so elite offensively, statistically during the regular season, there's just so much variance in their offensive process. And I feel like I've said it probably too many times on this podcast, but like they'll go through stretches where, okay, yeah, they're not really committing any turnovers. The ball might be moving. They're taking higher percentage shots. And then it's just, there'll be stretches where, they're committing a shit ton of turnovers and they're taking early contested looks in the shot clock that make no sense. And Jaylen Brown is deviating. Jason Tatum looks super passive or is settling. And I think he adjusted well. He was the one member of the Celtics who I think for the most part adjusted well as game 5 went on, where he started attacking more and then he had the jumper going for a little bit. And like you said, they did miss a lot of high quality looks. And I like I said, I do think there's probably some more. I think they could stand to be more aggressive defensively against Joel Embiid and Joel Embiid and James Harden specifically. Maybe we're then killing them if they do that, and then they're getting carved up by Tyrese Maxey or PJ Tucker from the corners. But I think it's easier to live with that than if we know Harden, especially if Harden's going to take mid-range J's, which was kind of a thing at the start of the season, and then it vanished into nothing, and now it's just a thing again, and it's working. Doc Rivers, someone asked me on the radio, and these radio hits are so hard because one, I'm not even calling out any producers. I know your job is hard, but like sometimes they're like, hey, can you come on in 20 minutes? And it's like, well, no. And that stresses me out when I have to say no. But two, you never really know what you're going to talk about. So they'll ask these questions. And one of my questions was, this was before game 5, is Joe Mazzulla being thoroughly outcoached in this series? And I was like, well, fuck. Like, that's not something I'd really given a ton of thought to. And I was like, well, maybe. It's like, is this the analysis that you come for? Is I'm just stuttering on there? Like, I don't fucking know. But like, he probably has. When you look at Doc Rivers as the Daniel House pushing that button, giving B-ball Paul, like some of the B-ball Paul minutes have just been an actual shot of adrenaline.
Yep.
Who got in foul trouble? Was it PJ Tucker early on in game 5?
Harris.
I remember who got in foul trouble, but you throw in DeAnthony Melton and the way that they've used him defensively through this series, I think that he's done a good job of that. I think this is more of a Sixers success story, in part, though, because it's exposed a lot of just, I don't even know if it's flaws, but question marks about the Celtics, where I don't know if it's simply just a matter of play more aggressive against the Joel Embiid pick and roll, hit more shots. Because I do think, to get like big picture, and they might win this series, it's just like, is there something weird now going on with the, like, how do we view this center rotation moving forward? Where it's just Al Horford's getting older. Robert Williams III, I don't know if he's still injured or if this is just a bad matchup for him, but that's going to have to be something they reflect on over the offseason, or if not, leading into game 6.
Yeah, I really thought that the Celtics would be able to at least, have a little success playing Williams and Horford together and just having Williams guard PJ Tucker. That has not happened. So as I was trying to imagine myself in your shoes, getting asked that question about Mazzulla getting out coached, and I think what I would have said is, the Nets kind of showed you with way worse personnel, like how you could do a decent job of making sure Embiid didn't get loose, which is you just double him relentlessly all the time and make the other Sixers, try to score. And the Nets lost that series for several reasons, but it wasn't necessarily because they had a bad defensive plan. Now, like, I'm not saying the Celtics, the obvious answer was, let's just do what the Nets did. Let's double all the time, because the Celtics just don't play that way. And it's, if you imagine the counterfactual of Boston coming up with this totally new defensive scheme where they double all the time and they trap and stuff, which they never do, and then they lose the series, then it's like, what is Joe Mazzulla doing? But at least, like, the Nets showed you a way to try to handle Embiid. And, maybe that would have just meant Harden had more than 2 40-plus point games. But I think there was something to take away from that first round series that the Celtics have not really gone to very much. It may be a little late in the game to try that. I think more than likely Boston is just going to, rely on making more shots and kind of sticking to the plan. But if, they're out of time now, because you can't lose again. So maybe it's a halftime adjustment. It's hard to say. What have you thought of, you mentioned Tatum. So like every year we do this thing where, is Tatum finally, at that tier 1 level of just like, if you have him, he can be the best player on a title team, because he shot 30.6% from 3, 45.5% overall. He's averaging like 26, 11, and 5, has had really good stretches. Do you feel like Tatum has had a good series, like a decent series, an encouraging series, a discouraging series? Like what? Because he's one of the most confounding, really good players in the league, because we're just never quite sure if he's all the way at the level we think he can get to, and we just kind of keep waiting. What has this series, if anything, kind of made you think or reevaluate about Tatum?
I don't think it's made me reevaluate Tatum at all. Is that a fair thing to say? It's just, if you have problems with the way that he settles or carries himself on offense sometimes, I don't think that's necessarily changed. But you've also seen, I think, at least in denser pockets, that this is someone who can be ultra aggressive if he doesn't have the jumper falling or the 3-pointer falling, where maybe you couldn't say that in years past. I think the bigger, and I don't know if it's an indictment, but doesn't speak to this team's structure, is that you're still not going to, okay, I think in this series he's tied for the lead in assists per game with Marcus Smart, but both of them are averaging, they have 3 different guys averaging 4 or more. Like, you don't have that. Marcus Smart is the best passer on your team. And that's maybe fine if Jason Tatum, as he reached like the levels of like Kevin Durant or Kawhi Leonard as a passer, I think he's probably closer to there than not. But like, I think really the main issue might be sometimes it's too easy for him to fade away because he's not the one that you're primarily going to use as the table setter. And I don't know if that's an indictment of his game or the roster structure. Does he need to be the one that's going to demand to operate on the ball more and run those set? Like, and then it seems like there are other players on the team where Jaylen Brown will feel like he gets frustrated, like all of a sudden deviating from the game plan. He's hoisting up a contested jumper, or he has one of those nights where he just goes like 3 of 8 from the foul line. I think he was in game 5, which is not it's atypical, but it's not completely unusual for him.
Yeah, he's got that in him every once in a while.
I think if anything, this series has reinforced the variable, the weird variability of the Celtics, where you look at their talent 1 through 7, let's say, and you're kind of left thinking, well, why the fuck are they trying to play Peyton Pritchard right now? Like, Joe Mazzulla was clearly searching. And it's just, to be in that situation when you have those top 7 guys, it's weird.
Yeah, right. It's just,
my camera's shaking because I'm so like,
it's hard to put a finger on it. That's why I was asking about Tatum. Is it's kind of like in a series that's gone away, that's getting away from you. If you're the Celtics, it's kind of like, well, maybe our best player just didn't play well enough. And I guess like 30% from 3 is not great if you're very much a make or miss team. But I don't come away from this thinking ill of Tatum either. Like, I think he's been good enough, and I think Brown mostly has been good enough too. I guess I'm just surprised that, I don't know. I just felt like the Sixers had, there were more holes to poke in the Sixers coming in. And I felt like, Embiid's injury was going to be a big issue. And I guess maybe it's really just like, I didn't think Harden had even, 1 game in him, like the 2 that he's played so far. So I guess maybe that's where it comes down to. I don't know. It's been amazing to see Harden have these games.
So Rome 8180, whose podcast I was on this past week, the Devil's Den podcast, I think it is. I don't want to get that wrong. I apologize. Said this in our Discords. I'm going to read it. Like he said it while we were recording. I've always thought coaching mattered a lot. I know Dan feels the opposite, but the fact that the Sixers have just been able to run the same Harden and Embiid pick and roll over and over shows the lack of adjustments. I also do think over history, you see coaches take over a team and that team take a massive leap with the same personnel. The Warriors would be an example. Well, clearly Mazzulla didn't hurt the Celtics during the regular season. He seems to be in over his head here. The playoffs probably maximize the importance of a coach since constant on-the-fly adjustments are required. And I read this by saying, 1, it's totally fair to think that way. And 2, is the person, the figure, the stakeholder in this series that you're most disappointed or most responsible for where the Celtics are. Is it Joe Mazzulla then? Because we just said, we're not going to ascribe the lion's share of the blame to Jason Tatum. It's as a team. I want to make that. You said, like you pointed out at the top of this, they missed a lot of shots that they normally make. Some of them super high quality. But if you had to just point, is it, okay, well, Al Horford's looked really weird or bad on offense at points. But then I feel like for me, it might just be more the defensive principles that the Celtics are espousing here, or their refusal to, or stubbornness to deviate from them or change them. And that I think would fall on Mazzulla. I might be all over. You talk me that it's RW3's fault for not being more eminently playable.
No, I don't know. I mean, that's interesting. I would say that like the Harden and Embiid pick and roll is one of the hardest actions to defend in the league, like full stop. That's just
right up there with Devin Booker existing. Yeah,
right up there with Devin Booker being alive and shooting basketballs. I know. It is fair to say that, and I just praised Darvin Ham for making a key adjustment that short circuited something that the Warriors probably thought, like, we got it now, like this is going to work. We got them. And then, no, you don't in the second half, like in-game adjustment. That's a real thing. I think, Eric Spoelstra is going to have several hagiographies written about him after this postseason too. And you just sort of can't praise those guys without, I guess, doing the opposite for the coaches that don't seem to be making the adjustments. By the way, with a roster in Boston that like you could do a lot of different stuff with that personnel. You got a lot of good like backcourt defenders. You have switchable forwards. You got Williams.
You
got
could roll
Horford.
out Grant Williams plus Caucasians like they did at the end of.
Sure. Why not? Get creative. I wouldn't go with that strategy, by the way.
No, I would not. That was just they cut into the lead when they came in.
Sixers wouldn't see it coming. They wouldn't expect it. That's not on the whiteboard in the that's not in the locker room.
The all transparent lineup.
Yeah. Fair point by Rome. I can't get too critical of that one.